Between the departure and the arrival, something happened in the water that no document was present to record. No ink survived the crossing, no court reporter sat in the hole and took the minutes of what our people negotiates with laws. When the last coastline disappears behind them and the horizon offers nothing but the cost of being carried somewhere without asking, the ocean received them without ceremony and kept the crossing in its deep memory, the way water keeps everything silently. But the ocean never forgot Africa, carried the longitude of Accra in its current, kept the temperature of the Guinea coast in the particular warmth that felt different to the skin that came from there that recognized, without knowing how or why it recognized, the water that had touched the same shores where the same skin had been baptized into the world, into the life before the life that the crossing interrupted but could not erase. The ocean is the only witness with no allegiance that held both shores in the same embrace. The ocean never forgot Africa, runs between the then and now like blood, carrying the memory in its salt water, the same salt in the tear, the same flood of recognition when the Rasta stands at the edge of any water, any shore, and feels the current pulling in a direction that the compass has no name or number for. Jah built the ocean as the long remembering, the thing too large and deep to be revised. No empire has successfully rewritten what the water witnessed and memorized. And the children of the crossing feel it still in the inexplicable toward the east, in the drum that speaks the frequency of home, in the fire that Babylon has never ceased to underestimate. Because the fire was lit on shores the ocean still remembers, and crossed the water not as ash but ember, and is burning still through all the dark Decembers. So stand at the water and give thanks for the crossing and the cost and the arriving, for the ones who held the ember through the waves and delivered it still burning to the living. The ocean never forgot Africa, and neither should the ones who carry it in the blood, in the bone, in the morning fire, in the locks, in the drum, and every righteous lit moment when Jah moves to a people and the people recognize the move. The ocean never forgot Africa, and Africa in them is still a proof. Same as permanent, but the route was already 3 meters down. Having a private conversation with the water table, the pavement does not know what it is standing on, does not feel the negotiation happening beneath, between the living and the patient, between the buried and the inevitable.
In the heart of West Kingston, a Rasta grew something in a tin can on a step, while the city built its glass. tradition. The tin can and the step and the seed kept their own council, their own calendar, answering to the sun and not the system. And what grew there in that recycled container was not just food, it was a quiet criticism
of every philosophy that says that life requires permission to continue. The root laughs at the permit and the bylaw and writes its own amendment through the sinew of the earth in the language of the living that the concrete never learned to read. Babylon built a city on a garden and forgot that underneath was still a seed. The root beneath the concrete never asked for the city to move before it grew. Just kept its conversation with the darkness and surfaced when the time was overdue. So when the system feels like it is total, like the concrete goes all the way down, remember West Kingston and the tin can and the seed that grew without the crown of anyone's approval or their funding. Just sun and Jah rain and Jah earth. The root beneath the concrete is still growing and has been since before the city knew its worth.
And that's since before the city knew its worth. That's its
Cartographer who tried to find it came back with coordinates for something else, a country that resembled what they saw, but smelled a compromise in someone else's shell of definition, someone else's ceiling, placed precisely where the sky should be. Zion is not a location you arrive at, it is a condition of the one who learns to see.
Marcus saw it from the deck of his possession. Highly spoke it into microphones of marble. Bob carried it inside a second-hand guitar and grew it into something past the bearable. Size of one man's chest until it needed every chest in every yard and field and shore. Zion traveling in the music like a seed, finding soil in places it had never been before.
Zion is not on any map that ends up drawn,
Not east of here, not
waiting past the dawn, in some geographical and promised coordinate.
Zion is the inside of the gate
That opens when the last fear finally drops, when Babylon inside the self finally stops, mistaking its own ceiling for the sky.
Zion is not on any map, and this is why.
Sits in the yard at evening, reading the last light on the mango leaf, is not waiting for a passport or a visa, is not filing any application for relief from the present into some future. Zion is already in the only conversation that Zion ever was between the living and the Jah that runs beneath the whole creation.
So stop the searching in the outward direction. Come back from the horizon, come back in. Zion is the clearing of the vision. Zion is the discipline of beginning again each morning with the undefended heart. Zion is the on any map, not past any sea. Zion is what you are when you are free.
Every morning before the color returned to things, when the water and the sky were still deciding where one ended and the other began, and the boat moved through the argument like a question.
He did not name the sea, did not call it generous or cruel, did not keep a record of what it gave or a grievance for what it took.
His grandfather had drowned in this same water, and he still came back the following morning, not from forgetting, not from the absence of fear, but from something that had no word in any language.
The sea had taken and the sea had given, and the accounting was not his to balance. He was simply one of the ones who went out and one of the ones who came back so far.
The ones who name the sea think they own something, think the naming is a kind of fence, but the sea has never learned a single word for anything, and this is its only defense against the ones who come with their intentions, their gratitude, their anger, and their maps. The sea receives them all without distinction and returns them, or does not, perhaps.
He pulled his nets in silence, read the water the way the water wanted to be read, not as a text with a lesson at the ending, but as a thing that simply was and said nothing and everything and nothing again. And he went home with whatever he was given and ate it slowly and was grateful in the way that only the unnamed things are living. It did not arrive in the expected envelope, did not knock with the consequence. So nobody gave thanks for it immediately. Nobody fell to their knees in the moment. It looked too much like disruption, too much like the opposite of what was meant.
But Jah has never been a respecter of the shape we draw around our asking. Has never colored inside the lines of what we thought the answer should be casting. As its shadow on the floor, before it the answered prayer arrived as lost sometimes. As a closed door that rerouted everything into the life that was always meant to find its way to us, through us, despite us. And the Tuesday that felt like the ending was Jah moving furniture around the room to make space for what was coming, descending.
The answered prayer nobody recognized came wearing ordained disguise. Not the miracle with its announcing light, but the quiet turn that changed the direction of the night.
In the reasoning circle, the elder said that every moment he had called his worst had water in it, had the underground river running beneath the drought, beneath the thirst that he had mistaken for abandonment, for the silence of a Jah who was not hearing, but was in fact moving in the deeper register, below the frequency of his own fearing.
So hold the unanswered prayer with open hands. Do not instruct Jah on the form of the reply. The corn does not tell the rain which cloud to come from. The root does not negotiate the sky. What is coming is already on its way, in a shape the asking could not have imagined. Give thanks before the recognition comes. The answered prayer is already happening.
Long before the ceremony and the bunting, long before the portrait and the seal were hung, the termite was already in the foundation, reading the wood in its original tongue. Not malice in the working, not rebellion, just the termite doing what the termite does, converting the permanent into the temporary, reminding stone and timber what it was. Before the quarry and the sawmill, before the throne room and the title deed, just the material of the earth returning to the earth at the earth's own speed.
Every empire has its termite, working patient in the bar, nobody checks. In the ceremony of the powerful, something quiet is already at the decks. Not the revolutionary with the speech, not the army at the gate with its intention, but the slow and unremarkable undoing of the rod that power never thinks to mention. The throne that looks more solid from the outside is often furthest gone beneath the sea. And the termite does not hate the throne, it simply knows that wood and time will meet.
What the termite knows about the throne is that nothing built by hands is fully owned. That the wood remembers being a tree and will return to earth eventually. Babylon can build as high as pride allows. The termite reads the timber, reads the vow. A permanence that power makes to power, and works its patient work hour by hour.
Jah does not need the earthquake or the flood to bring the arrogant construction down. Sometimes Jah sends something small and quiet, something that works without a sound. And the throne that stood for centuries of claiming that its right to stand was written in the sky discovers one morning in the ceremony that the leg gives way and cannot say why.
So let the termite work, let the wood remember, let the earth reclaim what was always earth. Babylon is not forever, never was. The termite knew this long before our birth. And the Rasta watching from the yard at evening, watching the great building show its age, is not celebrating someone else's falling, just reading the termite's ancient page that says everything returns, everything remembers what it was before the shaping underneath. The throne was always timber, always borrowed,
and the earth was always waiting for the same.
No document was stamped and witnessed clean. The inheritance arrived without announcement, in the space between what was and what would mean something to the ones who came after. It arrived in the callous and the posture, in the specific way of laughing at the difficult, in the refusal to be smaller than the culture.
Try to make them in the getting up, in the particular grace of the getting up, which is not the same as never falling, but something harder, something less discussed.
The grandmother did not know she was bequeathing, thought she was just cooking, just surviving, just doing what the morning asked of her. Before the morning finished its arriving,
but the child watching from the kitchen doorway was receiving without knowing it was given the entire curriculum of how to live inside a world that would prefer you weren't to live in.
So well, so full, so undiminished by everything it sent to make you less. The inheritance was in the watching of someone meet the morning nonetheless.
The inheritance nobody filed for lives in the bone before it lives in the knowing, in the way Jah moves through a people, in the direction they are always growing toward, even in the wrong season, even in the concrete, even in the lack. The inheritance nobody filed for is the thing that keeps bringing you back.
In the hills of Ethiopia it was land, a particular red earth, and what it meant to stand on ground that never changed its name, to belong to a place that never bent
Its identity around the conqueror's convenience, and this too is an inheritance, the memory of what it felt like to be rooted before the uprooting, before the long distance
between the foot and the earth that made it, became the condition and not the wound. The inheritance is in the reaching back,
painted mourning of your people, the direction they were always going.
Toward Jah, toward the light, toward the completion of a sentence at the crossing tried to end. The inheritance nobody filed for is yours, was always yours around the bend.
Of every year that tried to make you forget, it is waiting with the patience of the promised. The inheritance nobody filed for is the most valuable thing you have ever owned.
No vanity in the upward reaching, no ambition in the green unfolding. The corn grows because the corn must grow, because the agreement with the sun is old and holding. Since before the first hand cleared the ground and pressed the kernel into the dark, the corn was already practicing its rising. The sky was already mapping where to park. The light, the warmth, the particular angle of afternoon that the corn prefers. The relationship between the seed and season needs no witness and no go-betweens, no intermediaries. Babylon grew its towers to be seen, each floor a declaration of arrival. But the corn in the yard of the Rasta woman grows only in the business of survival. Not survival as the fearful understand it, crouching, hoarding, building walls of more. But survival as the seed understands it, opening, ascending, growing toward the thing it was created to become. Without apology, without permission, the corn does not consult the architecture of the city before making its decision. Corn does not grow to impress the sky, does not measure its own height or ask the why of growing. Just grows, just reaches, just becomes. Corn does not grow to impress, it grows for Jah. In Ethiopia, the highland corn has been growing since before the written word has fed the generation of the covenant and asked for nothing back except to be heard. In the grinding, in the cooking, in the sharing, at the table where the hungry find their place, the corn completes its only real ambition to become the nourishment to feed the face of the child who will grow and feed another. The circle that the corn has always known, that the purpose of the rising is the giving, and the giving is the only way it's grown. So grow without the need for the applause, reach upward not for recognition, but because Jah placed the rising in you like the corn. Before the sky was watching, before you were born, into the system with its measuring and ranking, into Babylon with its certificates of height. Draw the way the corn grows in the yard, quietly, faithfully toward the light.
efficiency. Every callous is a word in a language that the office and the academy never learn to speak or to decipher, but the earth reads it without any trouble. Recognizes the grammar of the faithful hand that pressed the seed into the soil double. Fisted not from anger, but from tenderness. The way you hold something you cannot afford to lose. The callous hand and the earth in conversation, writing what no scripture could quite choose. Jah does not write in the gold leaf of the cathedral or in the marble of the government hall. Jah writes in the knuckle and the weathered palm, in the hands that caught the child before the fall, in the fisherman's hands that know the rope without the eyes needing to confirm, in the healer's hands that find the fever with a touch more accurate than any term. The medical could offer, any instrument could measure in its clinical remove. Jah writes in callous hands because the calloused are the ones with something left to prove. What Jah writes in callous hands cannot be read by those who give commands from a distance, from behind the desk and seal. What Jah writes in callous hands is real. In Ethiopia, the farmer rise before the argument between dark and light is settled, and puts his hands into the ancient soil where the promise and the patience have long nestled. And Jah reads those hands going into the earth the way a father reads the face of a returning child, not for information but for recognition of something loved and kept and reconciled. So let the hands be callous, let them speak in the only language power cannot fade. What Jah writes in the hands of the faithful is the text that no empire can take. Read your own hands in the early morning before the day has told you what they are. What Jah writes in callous hands is starlight pressed into the earth from very far.
Same fire, two intentions. One come to the kitchen before the dawn, to soften what the earth grew hard with patience, to make the difficult thing able to go on. Into the body, into the walking day, into the child who needs to reach the evening. The fire in the kitchen is a kind of prayer, a daily and unglamorous believing that the body is worth tending, that the ones around the table are worth feeding, that the small act of the morning pot is its own form of interceding.
But carry that same fire to the cane field, and the prayer becomes a different conversation. The fire that fed the family in the kitchen became the language of emancipation. When the ones who had been softened long enough decided that the hardness had its season too, and the fire that Babylon had used for centuries turned in the hand and asked what it should do. For the ones who lit it, for the ones who kept it, for the ones who carried it across the water, not in a torch but in the memory of warmth, passed from mother into daughter. Same fire, two intentions, same flame, reading the room, the fire that cooks and the fire that burns, both children of the same womb.
Jah gave the fire without instructions, trusted the end, I held it with the choice. And the wisdom is in knowing which is needed, when to feed, when to speak in the fire fullest voice. The Rasta tends a flame with this discernment, the ital pot and the reasoning and the light of the chalice in the evening, all the same fire, all of it a conversation with the night. So honor the fire in whatever form it comes, in the kitchen and the struggle and the drum, the fire that cooks and the fire that liberates are both the answer when you ask what you become.
Keep the fire, keep it clean, keep it purposeful. Know the difference between the burn and the brighten. Same fire, two intentions, one people, and you're holding both, and you're holding, and you're lighting.
She measured nothing, not from carelessness, but from a different precision. The palm that cups the salt has its own calibration, older than the teaspoon and its fractions. The recipe is a translation, and something is always lost between the languages. What the hand knows about the dough cannot survive the journey into bran. She learned by standing close enough to feel the heat that rose from her mother's pot onto her face. By the sound the onion makes when the oil is ready, by the color that means 5 more minutes, not a clock. This is a knowledge that cannot be inherited through paper. It passes only through the body into body, through the years of standing in the same kitchen, until the kitchen enters you and stays. When she's gone, the recipe will be requested, and someone will attempt the fateful reconstruction. We'll measure everything with solemn accuracy and produce something correct and entirely wrong, because the ingredient that made it what it was had no weight, no volume, no temperature. It was the particular story of those hands moving through that steam for all those years.
became the answer to the riddle.
A sentence was broken mid-word, mid-breath, mid the very gesture of passing something from one hand to another. The water took the rest before the transfer, and the ones who arrived on the other shore carried only half of what was spoken. Not enough to finish, not enough to forget, just enough to know that something had been broken. And spent the next 3 centuries completing in the dark by field without the original. A sentence whose beginning they could only guess at, from the age of the missing syllable. The drum was half the sentence, the food was half the sentence. The way of standing in a doorway at evening, watching the light go, this too was half the sentence. Preserved without knowing it was preservation. Just the body doing what the body does, carrying the grammar of the unremembered in the particular rhythm of its was and is. For the body is the oldest archive, more faithful than the document or stone. Unfinished sentence in the movement, in the call and the response, in the moment. That became the music, that became the morning, that became the reason Babylon could not win. The unfinished sentence of the ancestor was being completed from within.
The unfinished sentence is still being spoken.
An explanation. Know that you are mid-sentence in a speaking that began before your birth, before the nation that claimed you, before the name they gave the water, before the border and the document and the seal. You are the mouth Jah appointed to finish what the ancestor could not but will. Through you is finishing, through you completing the sentence that the crossing tried to end. The unfinished sentence of the ancestor is finding in your living its harmony.
Yeah.
never forgot what the rest of the world was trying so hard to remember, under different names, in different tongues. The lion walked there before the cartographer gave the land a border and a price. Before the missionaries arrived with their translation of a fire that was already burning twice. As bright in the hills of Sheba and Axum, where the covenant was not a metaphor, but a living arrangement between a people and their maker, written in the blood before the pen, before the law.
The dread who lets his locks grow toward the sky is not making a fashion of his faith. He is growing an antenna for the frequency that Babylon's concrete cannot erase. Each coil a year of walking in the knowing that the head was always meant to reach above. The ceiling that the system built to limit the natural height of an uncolonized love. And Jah receives the signal without static, reads the intention in the root, not just the crown. The locks are not the fate, but they are faithful to the vow that keeps the righteous from going down.
Where the lion still walks the ground, remembers every emperor and every burning ember of a faith that crossed the ocean and came back. Where the lion still walks, nothing fades to black. Selassie rose before the League of Nations and spoke a truth that echoed past the room into the ears of those who had no microphone, no podium, no flag, no borrowed costume of legitimacy, only the bare fact of a people who had not consented to their chains. And his voice became the frequency the Rasta tuned to, through the Kingston Yard and through the mountain range.
For the message was not new, it was remembered by those whose bones already knew the sound. Ethiopia was not a place but a direction, the upward pull against the pressing down.
Jah is not a theory,
Not a proposition,
not an argument to win on a Sunday morning. Jah is the only
explanation
for the ones who should be broken, still adorning the earth with their presence,
with their music
with their children and their pepper,
and their drum.
with the specific and unreasonable beauty of those who have no reason left and still become.
So wear the colors of the lion without apology. Let the locks grow long into the open air. Eat from the earth with the reverence of the grateful, and give thanks for Ethiopia still there.
In the bone, in the drum, in the direction of every Rasta heart that ever beat. Where the lion still walks, the ground is holy, and the fire and Jah and the people finally meet. on the ship, but forgot to search a lining of the memory. The songs came across the water uninvited, folded small inside the chest where no one looks. The drum was confiscated at the shore, but the rhythm had already moved into the foot. And the foot remembered every generation after what the hand was not permitted to keep.
The language was replaced with another tongue, but underneath the new words the old ones waited like seeds beneath a season of wrong weather. Patience viable, refusing to be dated. And when the conditions finally shifted, when enough rain fell on the right ground, the old words pushed up through the borrowed language, and the people heard themselves again in the sound.
The seed they could not devour is still growing in the yards and in the music and the knowing that passes from the elder to the young. The seed they could not devour has not yet done. Babylon can move the body across the ocean, can't rename a river and a hill, can build its architecture over the sacred, but cannot reach to see the spirit hold still. For the most essential thing a people carries has no weight, no document, no form. It travels in the particular way they grieve, and in the particular way they survive the storm.
So when they ask you where your culture went, point to the foot that still knows the rhythm. Point to the kitchen where the old flavors live. Point to the child who never learned the system, but somehow knows the song.
The seed they could not deport is in that knowing, in the unbroken thread between the then and now. The seed they could not deport is still growing. Turning a particular conjugation of the homeward, the body moving through a borrowed landscape, while some interior compass keeps it forward, pointing in a direction with no road sign, no mileage marker and no welcoming committee. Just the pull that lives below the reasoning, below the adaptation to the city, that received you with its indifferent abundance and called the taking of what you could get. A life which was not wrong, only partial, like a sentence with the subject missing yet.
The salmon does not debate the returning, does not weigh the comfort of the current against the pull of the original water, does not find the homeward inconvenient, just turns one morning in the way the turn, and the river feels the difference immediately. The whole body now a single intention, reading the water like a text read repeatedly, until it becomes the body reading itself, until the river and the fish are conjugated, the same verb in the same direction, the grammar of the returning self-completed.
The grammar of the returning as one tense, the present only the present, urgent and immense, not the past that you came from, not the future arriving, just the turning, just the current, just the living in the direction of the original. The grammar of the returning is the call that Jah placed in the body before the exile, the sentence that completes itself in Zion after all. conjugated it in the speeches. Bob conjugated it in the minor chord that lifts at the end into the almost major, the almost home, the almost restored. And every Rasta who has felt the turning in the chest without a map or a date is conjugating the same ancient grammar, the body moving toward the open gate. Not the gate of our geography only, but the gate of the condition of the free. The grammar of the returning is the knowing that Zion was always inside you and me.
So when the turning comes, do not resist it. Do not negotiate with the direction. Just let the body read the original water and trust the salmon's ancient navigation.
The grammar of the returning has no error, no irregular verb, no exception to the rule. Jah wrote it in the bone before the exile, and the bone has never needed any school. Not the absence of color, not the blank page waiting for the event. Patience is the deep indigo of the dyer's hand, carrying the stain of every hour spent.
In the repetition of the necessary, the third soaking, the seventh pressing, the color only coming in the accumulation of what looked like nothing, what looked like resting, but was in fact the dye moving through the fiber, changing what the thread was at its core. Patience is the color that arrives only after you have stopped watching for it.
The elder's face is the most patient canvas. Every line I hear that did not break her. Every deepening around the eye, a decade of choosing to return to what Jah made her. Not the woman Babylon was shaping with its insistence and its measuring tape, but the woman the long patience was revealing beneath the pressure and the daily weight of living in a world that moves too fast for anything of depth to show its color. The elder waited out the shallow season and arrived at something richer, something fuller. The color of patience is the indigo, the deep blue black of what takes time to show. Cannot be rushed, cannot be approximated. The color of patience is the last to go. When everything that imitated death has faded in the washing and the years, what remains is what was truly planted. The color of patience, one like it was always here. Often carry what the first words were approaching without knowing, the whole circle moving toward the color that the patient one was holding. And when it finally surfaces in the speaking, the circle recognizes it together. This is what we were trying to arrive at. This is the indigo beneath the weather of all our urgency, our from reaching toward the thing that had the whole time. The color of patience waited in the circle found its rhyme. So dye your faith, the color of the patience. Soak it in the repetition of the truth. Let the color move through every fiber of the life that Jah is making out of you. Not the quick dye of the convinced and certain, but the indigo of those who stayed and stayed until the color was no longer something added, but the color that the thread itself had made.